Thank you so much for coming to today's interview.
Mhm.
My name is Kinuko, and I'm CEO of Top Runner Marketing.
Mhm.
So have you been to Japan before?
I have, yes, twice.
Oh, where did you go?
Last year, the first time was only for 4 days, which was Tokyo, Osaka, Kyoto, so typical tourist.
Typical tourist.
But I was there for 3 weeks last year and went to
Oh,
Tokyo, Hakone, Nara, Koyasan,
Koyasan.
Kanazawa.
Oh, which was
Uh,
your favorite?
they were all awesome.
I'm very glad to hear you very liked Japan.
I think everyone does, yeah.
So thank you for coming to today's interview. And I would like to ask you about the business use case of generative AI. So first of all, could you please introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Sean McGurr, Dr. Sean McGurr, even. I'm the Chief AI and Data Officer at Devon Software Services.
Thank you. So the first question is about success case studies of using generative AI. Could you share some recent success stories of using generative AI at both the corporate and business level? I would love to hear about how generative AI is being used and the detailed outcomes.
Absolutely. So I can start with my own company and how we're using it. So we're a software development consultancy. That's our specialty. So we've been applying generative AI in the software development process itself, right? So helping develop software faster and with higher quality. And so there's a number of ways you can use generative AI to do that. The most obvious one most people know about is code completion. So products like GitHub Copilot allow a developer, while they're in their flow and writing code, to get suggestions on how to write the rest of the code in that part of the code that they're writing. In terms of outcomes, most of the research, and it's the same for us, has led to about a 10 or 20% speed increase for those tasks, right? So it helps. You need to start the task, and it can help you finish the task easier. In that software development lifecycle, where we have found a bigger impact is actually in testing and quality, right? Which is often neglected or undervalued, or not enough of that is done in many software development settings, especially big corporates where there's a lot of time pressure to finish the job and get moving. So we found in those parts of the workflows, some tools like Postman's Postbot have led to about a 50% increase in the speed of some tasks like testing APIs. So when we're developing software even, there's a lot of ways that AI can make that faster, but also high quality. And that's a very technical kind of use case. But many businesses and every corporation is developing software at some level. So that's kind of relevant to everyone. If we go to a much more business centric, also in a large corporate. So in my previous job, I worked for a large energy generation company in Europe called Ørsted. And the energy sector worldwide is undergoing a lot of change. There's a lot of trends from conflict in renewable energy and carbon and everything. And all of these big, complex global issues really affect how they run their business. And what they asked us for help with last year was, how can they improve the flow of information and news and reports about those big changes in their industry to the executives who are making decisions? Because what they found is across 100 or 200 top executives, all of them subscribed to slightly different industry publications. They read slightly different websites, different times of the day. And so there was no easy way to get a sort of unified view of what is happening in the sector overall. Now, the traditional way to do this is to have a newsletter writing team, right? And it was the newsletter team who came to us and said, look, we have all these subscriptions to different sources of news about our industry, and we want to create a well-rounded newsletter that gives an overview. But if we do this manually, if we do it ourselves manually, it will take a huge amount of time. It will take every week, it will take all of our time, and we still won't finish the job. And so that was a very universal case. Most corporates have this challenge of keeping executives well informed of the latest industry developments and keeping them sort of universally informed. And the outcome, the output there is large language models and generative AI can really help that, because the thing they're best at is taking large bodies of text about a subject and generating summaries. And so the time to develop that reduced drastically. More importantly, they were able to integrate and cover many more sources of that industry news. So instead of each executive having one or two favorite places that they would go to learn about the industry, each executive is now being informed by a more collective viewpoint across the whole industry. Most corporates sell things, or they need to sell things. And so also last year, one of the early use cases that I helped one of the customers of that company work on was just using generative AI to filter their sales targets. So most sales organizations, they go and look for sales targets, and they start with a big list of all the companies that they want to sell to, and then they need to try and filter that list down, reduce the list, and put it in the right order. And again, because there's a lot of information available out there about companies, and because generative AI is really good at summarizing large sets of information into smaller sets of information, that really helped them prioritize their sales list quite remarkably. I can give more examples if you like. Just tell me when to stop.
Thank you so much for sharing so many case studies. So you mentioned about writing some code by AI and increase the efficiency of engineering some product development. I would like to ask you about how engineers' job role gonna be changed by using generative AI.
Yes, so in some ways, AI will actually take software engineering a little bit back to the past in some ways. So I've heard this articulated by people who are maybe a bit older than me and who've been in the industry a longer time. In the 1990s, kind of many software engineers were heavily involved in the design of systems and the design of applications and kind of the end-to-end work, from working with the customer to understand what is really needed, writing code, testing code, deploying, releasing code, and making it all happen. And one of the things that happens in any industry over time is specialization and a narrowing of focus. So if you look at many software teams now, it's like a tiny little factory, and different individuals do very specific things. Now, the problem of this, if we look at it from an agile point of view, is that it's very slow once you start to chop things up, because dependencies increase. And so one way that software engineer jobs are going to change as a result of this, and we're already seeing it with some of our teams, they allow each of those specialists to more easily develop the skills in the neighboring discipline, right? So if a software developer, say a back-end engineer, right, would benefit from developing some front-end engineering skills, the barrier to that is lowered by different ways of using AI in the process. Similarly, most developers should probably write more tests of their code and better tests, more thorough tests as well, and not leave that to people who have the testing job title or the quality engineer job title. And so what we've found with some of our smaller teams that are also full of more senior people is that AI is helping them kind of close the gap between those job roles, right? So fewer problems emerge with the handoff, because people are actually starting to blend the work into each other's roles. Now, you also see a message out there about how AI will make software engineers and software development obsolete, because we'll just talk to AI and it will just develop the software that we want it to. And I think for extremely simple software, like a website to promote my restaurant and do nothing else, well, we've already had a way to do that cheaply and easily for a very long time. And so, yes, AI will make obsolete the kind of coding for coding's sake, when we were still writing software code to do things that can already be done much more easily than that. AI will kill off the last part of that kind of work. But every company probably wants to develop more software, and they want to do that better, and they want it to be more reliable and done to a higher quality standard, right? It's hard to find someone who wants less software that's worse and developed slower. And so AI is going to help the developers that choose to embrace it to become that more holistic software developer, what that's going to actually force them to do is talk to other human beings more, right? Which is a good thing for developing customer-facing software, because it's going to help developers get back closer to the way they were, working with customers to really understand the problem being solved, rather than sitting in a little box solving a single technical problem and then solving another single technical problem. But this is going to play out over 5 or 10 years. It's going to it's going to be different in startups and large enterprises. It's going to be different for really experienced developers and really new developers. So there's a lot of flux, a lot of change coming, but I really think that in 5 or 10 years, software development is going to look very, very different than it does today.
Thank you. It's very interesting point that the role of engineer is going back to the old days with the rise of AI. Thank you.
It's a little bit ironic and probably a good thing.
I think so too, because that now engineers' roles are much far from the customer.
Yes, and I think in a very small startup that's fighting for survival, yes, the engineers will be exposed to customers and customer problems. But if you think about most software that is written is actually being maintained or upgraded, right? And it's already running, and it's in big companies, right? So we often think about the hero engineer in a startup who does amazing things as a one person, but most software engineers are not working in that context. They're working in a much tougher context with legacy and politics and all kinds of other difficulties, where AI can actually help them make quite a difference. But they're going to have to learn to solve some problems that they may have forgotten how to solve by being isolated in a room writing code somewhere.
Thank you. The next question is about AI strategy. From your experience and knowledge, what are the key points and tips for companies to effectively utilize generative AI?
So the most important thing for companies to utilize generative AI effectively is to not put it on a pedestal and think of it as some kind of god, right? Generative AI, it generates data, generates content, nothing more, right? You then have to think about really hard, what data do you feed into it, for what purpose? How do you build a product around it? How do you control the quality of what it delivers for your customers, right? So like any new and trendy technology, early on, a lot of people think it's going to save everyone from everything. It's a magic bullet to solve this or that problem. A point I was making a lot a year ago, and it seems to have been a good prediction, is if CFOs and CEOs looked at the early ChatGPT and thought, finally we can get rid of our customer service department and we can fire everyone in our call center and start to get rid of all of these annoying and expensive human employees, that's really a terrible way to think about any technology and a really counterproductive way to think about generative AI. And I think already we're starting to see some people who were very bullish about how this will wipe out lots of human jobs, reassessing their point of view, right? So it is just a tool that's very good at solving particular kinds of problems. If you don't understand the problems that you're trying to solve with it, you will, like any technology, you will get disappointing results. And the key thing for deciding where to apply it in your business, right? You really need to understand processes at a very deep level. You need to understand processes enough that you know how you could change them, right? Because of digitization and automation, some processes have gone from 3 steps to 13 steps. Some of them have gone from 20 steps to 10 steps. What generative AI, well, all AI, including generative AI, can allow a company to do is to look at their processes and actually reinvent a process entirely, right? So what everyone wants to see is early on is some proof that it can help them improve some small step in a process. But if they want that to change their business, that's not going to happen. It's going to be incremental. And so I understand why people want to go after low-hanging fruit and easy use cases and put another chatbot on their website. But those things usually are not going to deliver the value that people are expecting if they believe that generative AI is some magic wand. But if they are willing to put in the hard work to really look at how they do their business, how they run their business, they will find opportunities where they can completely change how they do something because of what generative AI can offer.
Yeah, I have some experience. Some website I visited. There was the chatbot using generative AI. So, and that time was no customer support real time. So I tried to use the chatbot with AI, but it didn't totally work. So I was so frustrated I couldn't get any answer, and I had to retry the next day. So I totally understand your point.
Exactly. And the challenge of chatbots for customer service is that I think many customers of companies would rather not talk to customer service. If your product, if your service is working, I don't need to ask you questions about how to make it work. And so whenever I am calling a company, I'm their customer, I'm calling them about something complicated and frustrating. I'm not calling them about easy stuff. How do I change my payment method? Okay, I can probably do that online. How do I buy more stuff or less stuff? If you make this easy for me to do without talking to you, I'll just do it and we're done. But when I'm calling you, it's about some strange problem with my internet or something where I have tried everything already and now really only a human can help. And I think that's where that frustration comes from. No AI agent is available. And I saw a case today actually where someone posted a screenshot of an AI telling them that there were no AI agents available to speak to them. It may have been a mistake and they actually meant we have no humans available. Again, if you really think about how you serve your customers and solve their problems, you will find ways to use AI to augment customer service. And for me, an obvious one is when we call up customer service, they always ask us the same question in a sequence. And it can be frustrating when you know the questions they're going to ask. Generative AI could be listening and actually allowing you to skip questions and get to the customer problem in 3 questions instead of 10 questions. And the customer likes that. The customer service agents likes that. The company likes that as well. And also all of the note taking and action points and all of that stuff. Again, we can free customer service agents from typing all of those notes, have AI do that, and have them focus on really trying to understand as a human to human, how do I make the customer more happy? That's a lot harder than putting a chatbot on a website, which is why people do the chatbot thing, and then some of them will realize there's a lot more that AI can do for us.
It's very important to judge which tasks gonna be responsible for AI or human.
Absolutely.
So the next question is about the latest trends of AI. What are the key trends in the use of generative AI in 2024?
So I think in 2024, one trend is going to be cost. 2023 was all about, let's do a proof of concept, let's try lots of things, let's put it as many places as we can and see what happens. I've already heard stories about some of those proof of concepts that were just sort of kept running using maybe very expensive services, and no one's using the interface anymore. No one's using the AI, but it's still running. So yeah, AI and sophisticated AI, the most powerful algorithms, tend to cost a lot of money. And so I think 2024, the cost of AI will become a bigger topic. Because it's not a free lunch. And also early on in the sort of ChatGPT age, there were lots of incentives to use free stuff, and now it's too expensive to give away free. On the positive side of cost, right, what we're seeing, if you look at OpenAI's models, Google's models, Microsoft's, Meta's models, they're becoming more and more capable with fewer and fewer resources to run. And so we're getting to a point where, given what you want to use AI to do, there's now a range of different AI models that you can choose from. Some of them are paid, some of them are free, open source, licensed this way. You run them via an API, but some of them you can even run on your laptop and completely offline. So I'd say kind of offline large language models is another theme for this year. The progress has been quite incredible on, especially when you focus an LLM on a specific task, right? So given the sort of head start that Google, Microsoft, OpenAI, and others have on the big general purpose models, I don't think anyone's going to catch them for a sort of completely general purpose chat experience like we're used to with ChatGPT. But when it comes to coding assistance or test writing or more specific applications, people have already found ways to really take those larger models and shrink them all the way down, train them more on specialized questions and answers and data for a particular task, and then package that up in a way that you can install it on your laptop, turn off your Wi-Fi, turn off your internet, and use a large language model and get an experience like a ChatGPT completely offline. And this helps to solve partially the whole kind of data privacy, data leakage, what's going to happen with my data. So the first theme for 2024, I think, is the cost and managing the potentially exploding cost. There's some good news coming in that more and more capable things can be sort of downloaded free open source and run on much smaller hardware. And then in terms of the capabilities of AI, the thing that's making the most impact right now is kind of this theme of agents, right? So expecting one large language model, one AI product to do everything end to end in the way that we kind of expect a ChatGPT to do all these things, whether it's capable or not. A lot of research and a lot of great results are coming out where when you break that task down into many steps and you have an AI agent responsible for different parts of that task, you can get drastically better results. And again, it's back to my point about specialization. There's an optimal level of specialization. And for many tasks, having one AI tool try to do everything is not optimal. Actually, if you have much smaller AI agents handle different parts of the task and only focus on that, and then you need to find a way for them to communicate with each other, then you can get drastically better results. So the big uplift in performance that we're seeing and new capabilities tends to be coming from that agent approach.
You mentioned about the cost of AI. Actually, in Japan, there are many cases. Companies try to push for AI adoption to increase the efficiency in the company with much investment. But actually, it's often be challenging to get employees to utilize AI. So how do you suggest increasing the AI usage among employees within a company?
Yes, I've seen the same thing in Europe. It's quite a common theme. So some customers of ours, some pretty large enterprise customers have said things to us like, we bought 300 Microsoft Copilot licenses and we thought that they would go off the shelf in a week. We thought, we have to buy more. And then they've been a little bit surprised that the uptake was slower than usual. And I just sort of smiled because this is the same with every technology, right? Every technology goes through this wave of early adopters and a late majority. The majority is always late, just basically by definition. Part of it with AI is driven by fear, I think. So many employees are afraid, and sometimes for good reason, of AI. One thing they're afraid of is, what if I'm the one who gives away sensitive company data to some AI product? I just did a webinar today on that topic because that's the most common question I'm asked by developers, business leaders, just colleagues, everyone. What will happen to my data, or what trouble could I get into or my company get into if I share the wrong data with the wrong AI? So I think that highlights for any company struggling with adoption of any flavor of AI, a big educational effort is required to demystify it, right? To make it real for individuals and to teach them how to manage the risks. So in this way, it's really just like any other technology. Widespread adoption, if you want it to happen in a good way, it takes effort, right? It won't go viral. What goes viral is consumer technology, TikTok, things like that, we maybe don't want those things to happen in that way in our companies. So a lot of the adoption challenge is just, this is new technology. People are uncertain how to use it. They've read news articles about the risks. Some people will then just use it anyway because they don't care. Most people in a job with a mortgage to pay, a family to feed, and a career to worry about will probably stay in their lane, right? And that's the aspect of AI that's a bit more unique to AI, right? So a lot of it is just general technology adoption challenges. But the unique thing about AI is that to fully take advantage of AI actually means changing how you and your team and your company make decisions, right? So at the most basic level, any one of us can use AI tools to get lots of different perspectives on a problem and help us make a better informed decision. I use it to do that a lot. At the most advanced level, many companies are already completely automating some decisions, even big decisions, right, with AI. So there's a lot of discussion and fear about how AI might take away human jobs. But the bigger challenge to me is actually how AI will change human decision making. And most organizations are not very good at changing how they make decisions, right? They have hierarchies, people have careers, there's a lot of people coordinating, right? So that's the real power of AI, right? Is to change and improve how we make decisions as humans. So if employees have seen a company not really change how it makes decisions, not improve how it makes decisions, and then they get told, use AI to make better decisions, but they don't see anything changing, they will feel very disheartened and discouraged and not bother. So part of it is education to reduce the fear, but part of it has to be the organization actually needs to adapt to this new technology over time.
Thank you. That's very interesting point of the any tools are kind of like that, not only AI, but other products are same. There are early adapter and the rate majority. So do you think it's a good way to ask some early adapter to ask them to spread the AI for late majority with viral?
Do you mean use the early adopters in a company to
Yes.
kind of evangelize? Absolutely. That will work the best always. Because then that key point of making it real within the company and for the individuals, it's a colleague talking about how it's changed their job, how it's changed their life. And so we've seen this with some customers who've been struggling with this, and where there've been a lot of skeptics in the company, maybe and from some unexpected areas, but then all it takes is one person to stand up and say, I did it, and I was afraid at the start, but I attempted it, and I refined how I did it. And now, I'm not an AI person telling you to do more AI. I'm a salesperson or a marketing person. And some of the things it can do, some people are doing jobs in a way that is not even using 5 years ago technology very much, right? And so there's some interesting things to think about. Where might the most rapidly adopting late majority be? It won't always be in the expected places because AI can change some tasks so much. It's not like everyone gets a 5% speed up, so we just do it for the most expensive people, right? You actually need to, as we were discussing before, go around and find those pockets. But if it's done in the language of the business by people who work there, that's not unique to AI. Any technology is better adopted that way.
I think it's a good way to not being asked by CXO or manager to just using AI, but colleague telling some merit of using AI.
Yes, unless the CXO stands up and says, here is how I am using AI to change my job and to change and improve how I make decisions. Then I think it's a good idea for them to do that. But otherwise people are not stupid, right? If someone says, use this technology to put yourself out of a job, people know how, people have seen this before.
True. I think I totally agree. So the next question is about your use case of generative AI. So could you tell me some examples of how you are applying AI in your daily tasks?
So a lot of my job is about explaining what we've been discussing in many different ways. And sometimes finding a new way to explain the same stuff again and again can be challenging, right? So generative AI is useful for me as someone who has some expertise and ability to connect these complex topics to what people care about. It really helps me sometimes stop procrastinating, right? It can give me a kick. And so I use it to do that. If I'm struggling to get started, if I'm struggling to find inspiration, on a given topic. I can have a chat with ChatGPT or Gemini or any product, and I sometimes use multiple, right, to compare the results. To just get started, right? Because sometimes for some tasks where the task is to generate content, to generate data, just getting started is tough. Recently, I was developing a training course, and I needed to actually generate some fake data, some poor quality data that we were going to use in an exercise to learn about what makes data good quality, poor quality, and what we can do about it. And in the past, I would have, manually created that. I would have created different, this was employee data or simulated employee data. So I had a shot using Gemini to do it, the Google product. First, I asked it, what are the problems that you would anticipate in employee records data? Name, job title, location, start date, this kind of stuff. It gave me a whole bunch of problems. I said, okay, here's some more problems. Now, can you generate data that has these problems? For the names of the people, I'd like you to use characters from Game of Thrones because it's a relative, it's finished now. It's relatively famous enough. People will kind of get the joke. There's lots of people in Games of Thrones who just have one name, right? And basically in about 5 minutes, I was able to generate very realistic looking fake data that had all the problems that I wanted. In a column on the side, it generated, here's what's wrong with this data. I deleted that because the exercise was to teach humans how to spot these things. But that would have taken me a lot longer to do that. And in terms of some personal use cases, so working out what to cook when you have a given set of ingredients and no ideas is really challenging. So I'm not sure about Japanese cuisine. Someone needs to try and let me know. But if you tell a large language model product what you have left over in your fridge and some idea about what you might feel like eating, it's pretty good at generating edible recipes. Now, you need to do quality control. And if you think it's telling you to do stupid things, you should ask it to reconsider. But one of the reasons that works so well is there's so many recipes on the internet. And when we read them, they're so full of ads that actually doing that by searching through Google or something is really tough. But large language models have basically learned all those recipes. And so when you tell it, I've only got these ingredients, it can search just in the space of recipes that have those ingredients and give you some great options. And it's the same with travel itineraries or anything where there's a lot of content on the internet that has been SEO'd, search engine optimized. And now it's full of ads. We can access that information a lot faster and easier. So I use it for those kinds of things. And I also use it to provide a second opinion, right? So sometimes if I'm writing a blog article or a presentation and I want someone or something to poke holes in my argument, to challenge me, I can ask, what am I missing? I'm trying to convince people of this. I'm trying to educate people on that. Here is what I have. What am I missing? What can I add? What is too much, right? So it's a really, in English at least, that's called rubber ducking. So sometimes just talking to a rubber duck or any other object and explaining what you're doing can help you find a problem, find a way forward. This is a rubber duck that can actually talk back and give you ideas. So those are some of the ways that I apply it in my job daily.
Your case was very interesting because I'm a big fan of Game of Thrones, and
Okay,
I have
yeah.
some empathy about talk about the refrigerators. I really hope the future refrigerators will be AI equipped because I usually cook and what was inside, what was left over.
We've been promised that for, I feel like 20 or 30 years. I used to watch shows about advanced technology, usually in Japan in the 1990s. And here's some fridge and it knows what's inside it and it can tell you all this stuff. All that seems to have happened is we now have, Wi-Fi on our fridges, but it can't do anything useful. But that'd be great. And then what if your fridge could generate a shopping order for you? I would love that. Instead, I'm very fast at it, but I still have to do it manually. And when I click the Smart Shop button in the grocery delivery service that I use here, it's not very smart. Like it hasn't learned that you only need a new bottle of soy sauce. Like if if you're not in Japan, you only need new Kikkoman soy sauce every 2 months, right? Rather than every week. And it's just because we can do this so easily at the recipe level with someone will figure this out, but that becomes more of a data problem. And how do we get the data from the fridge to the recipe to the shopping cart, and that's a business challenge more than a technology challenge, actually.
I always make some very long shopping list what to buy, looking at the refrigerators. So it's gonna be very good things.
Yeah.
So the next question is about AI tools. Besides the major tools like ChatGPT, and you already mentioned Gemini, but what are some AI tools you are currently using that are not widely known, but you would highly recommend to use?
So the first recommendation on tools would actually always to try and use multiple, so I mentioned before if I'm using ChatGPT, I'm also using Gemini or Microsoft Copilot. So that helps me understand some of the differences, right? But each of them have different strengths. And so this is kind of generally true about AI and machine learning. It's called ensembling. So combining answers from different techniques, different approaches, it works when humans are doing things, and it works when machines are doing things too. So if you have a favorite large language model product, it's a really good idea to also use another one from time to time, because it might be useful for you. So in addition to those, I'm also experimenting with running some of those open source models that I mentioned on my laptop. So I have a reasonably powerful MacBook laptop with the nice M2 or M3 chip. So there's some tools one's called Ollama, the other's called LM Studio. And they put some large language model infrastructure on your laptop. You can download different models, especially from places like Hugging Face, which is kind of a marketplace for large language models, and other AI models actually as well. So those have the advantage of, you can test things with maybe more sensitive data that you're not willing to send to other services. And actually for some use cases, they can be faster and almost as accurate. So those are what I use for the standard large language models that we all do. An AI tool that I actually used a long time ago, it's called Descript. It's an audio editor that lets you edit a podcast or an interview like this one by removing words. So 4 or 5 years ago, you put the audio file in, it read the audio file, it gave you a transcript of who was saying what. And then you could click a button to remove the words like and and all this stuff. But then you could also edit it, not by looking at the waveform of the audio, but deleting words. Like, oh, that's not relevant. I just delete that paragraph, and the audio immediately, and seamlessly went together. They've now added a feature, which if you have enough audio recordings of someone's voice, you can now add words back in. I haven't used that one yet, but already 4 or 5 years ago, that was the example where AI was revolutionizing a workflow to manually edit podcast audio when you have 2 hosts, like my podcast, and you're interviewing 1 or 2 guests, and 2 or 3 people might be talking at once, and it's just a mess when you had to do it the old school way. And so my co-host and I, we found that tool that saved 80-90% of the time of editing a podcast. And that's the case where I've seen something that I had to do. Once AI could help me do it, really changed how much time that took and made it so much easier. That's been my favorite example from my own experience.
Thank you for sharing some tools. I will check it because I usually edit some interview like this and some presentation. So I would like to use that. Thank you.
Yeah, they still have a free version that offers some level of capability, and then they have cheap versions. I mean, if you edit a lot, maybe it starts to get more expensive. But if you're editing a lot, then you really need to save that time. And the charging mechanism, their business model is, they charge for transcribing that audio into the transcript. And again, today you can do a lot of this yourself with different tools, but just the fact that you can even record in Descript, but you record anywhere, you put the file in. It now does video and audio, right? So it's just, it's very worth investigating.
I will try after this interview. So
Yeah,
thank you
maybe
so
use it on
much.
this interview. Yeah.
So that's all questions from me. So thank you so much for attending today's interview.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So do you have some message for Japanese business person who are trying to using AI?
For a long time, a lot of people outside Japan have looked to Japan for different kinds of technological innovation, right? And Japan is incredibly good at using some kinds of technology to solve some kinds of problems. It's changing a little bit now that I've been to Japan recently, but when you go to Japan, you sometimes find some things don't seem to be as far along as they are elsewhere. And I don't think it's because of anything about Japanese people or culture. I think it's about kind of Japanese companies and business models, right? So for a Japanese business person watching this interview, I would go back to what I said about where to apply AI in your business. And it's actually the same advice that I give everyone in the world. In any business, right, whether it's a competitive struggle or something about the way your sector is regulated or the customers that you have, you're struggling against some boundary, right? Something is stopping you from growing, something is stopping you from becoming more profitable. What AI offers us is a way to be very creative about how we overcome those boundaries, right? So the wrong way to look at AI is just a thing that makes us more efficient and we just keep on doing what we're doing, right? That's for really big companies, that's kind of okay because they're really big companies today. They'll be really big companies tomorrow. And that's very true of some very big companies in Japan. Anyone with a bit more room to move, right? They really need to think about how does AI free me from a little part of the prison box that I'm in, right? And how do I use it to be creative and do things quite differently in the way that the Japanese automotive industry started to build cars in a very different way. But now everyone in the world builds vehicles the same way, right? And that was by ignoring how American companies built cars, right? And thinking of a different way to do it, right? That example of, any factory worker being able to reach up and stop the production line when they saw a quality issue. It's completely wild if in the 70s, 80s, 90s, Western scholars, Western businesses were like, why would you let ordinary people, ordinary workers stop the production line? The job of the production line is to run, right? Like that ability to look at a problem and just say, we're going to do it a different way, right? AI offers that same kind of opportunity again. But you have to ask really hard questions about how you run your process and how you make money in a business.
It's very important to understand the process is the first priority things you mean. Thank you so much. So have a great night.
Thank you very much. Have a good day in Vancouver.
ありがとうございました。
ありがとうございました。
失礼します。
はい。